Hello again. In Britain, we rubbed along quite happily for centuries with laws which might have seemed old-fashioned or inadequate for the purpose, but which weren't well enough because everybody understood how far one might go and didn't take too much advantage of the grey areas. So it was that opening a bank account was a fairly free and easy business 40 years ago. You could do it without any identification, in fact. Then immigrants coming to this country saw a marvellous chance to start using our relaxed approach to undertake money laundering, and the law was tightened up until opening a bank account became a frustrating and time-consuming process. The strictness relating to passport photographs and the need for even toddlers to have their own passports was also caused by immigrants using lax procedures to enable illegal immigration to this country. Then there was the ancient prohibition of double jeopardy, which most of us thought of as a sacred principle of British law and fairness. If somebody was acquitted of a crime, then that was the end of the matter forever. It was impossible to try somebody twice for the same crime. This had been the case in this country from time immemorial. Then, after the acquittal of some men for the murder of black teenager Stephen Lawrence, the Macpherson report into the case recommended that the principle of double jeopardy should be abandoned so that the men acquitted of the murder could be tried again. This duly happened, and centuries of British traditional and legal precedent was scrapped because of immigration. Nobody would have suggested such a radical solution had the murder not had racial overtones. The latest casualty of this process is home education in Britain. There has never been a legal requirement in this country to send your child to school or to tell anybody at all what you're doing regarding the child's education. I didn't send my own daughter to school for a single day, and there was no need for me to notify anybody or do anything at all other than just educate her myself, which I did. When she turned 5, I didn't have to tell the council that I wasn't sending her to the school. I didn't have to notify anybody. I just got on with it and educated her. School in this country has never been compulsory. The law requires parents to make sure that their child receives an education suitable to age and ability, and you can, if you wish, contract the job out to the local authority or pay somebody else to do it. If you like, though, you can just do it yourself. It's a parental responsibility. The Queen, for example, never attended school. Only tiny numbers of people, generally cranks like me, educated their children at home until about 15 or 20 years ago, and the system worked fine. Then Muslim immigrants began to set up unregistered schools, and on the pretext of home education, children were taught only about the Quran, and girls hardly received any kind of education at all. The children of these places were, according to the parents, being educated at home, and it was impossible to prove otherwise. So what happened was that Muslim parents either didn't send their children to school, or they took their children out of school and told the school that they were deregistering them because the kids would be taught at home. They weren't. They were sent to unregistered and illegal schools instead. Islamic schools where they didn't really learn a great deal. Black evangelical churches, by the way, got in on this act as well. They also became involved, and there were also some pretty awful yeshivot. Over the last few years, this problem has grown until there are dozens such illegal schools, and it has proved necessary to crack down on them. A recent case shows why. It's absolutely ghastly. In the description to this video, I give a link to a news item about the discovery in one such illegal school, Muslim school, of a room which contained a bed and medical equipment, including scalpels. The suspicion is, and 2 men have been arrested and now bailed, that the girls attending the school have been mutilated there, having their genitals carved up. I'm sure most of us have heard of female genital mutilation. It's an African thing, African Muslim. All the pupils at this school are supposedly being home educated, and so the authorities have now been forced to step in. The Queen's speech this week in Parliament made mention of a new schools bill whereby parents will be legally obliged to contact their local authority and tell them if there is the intention of educating their children at home. The next step will be to inspect the educational provision and then, of course, to impose regulations upon it. A very relaxed system which worked perfectly well since Victorian times will thus be swept away because, once again, immigrants find that the British traditions are easy to exploit for their own ends. This is a truly terrible move because at the moment the responsibility for educating children rests legally with parents and not the state. Once this law comes in, the right of parents to educate their children how they see fit without reference to anybody will be swept away, and children will in effect become wards of the state, and the state will then decide how they should be educated rather than their parents. Shocking prospect.